this is an iterative process. It's just learn and experiment and have fun with it. Like, that is the most important thing, because you could go viral tomorrow, but if you don't have that mindset of constantly learning and iterating, it's ultimately not going to be sustainable, because we all have to reinvent ourselves. The most successful people, like, I've talked to some really wealthy and successful people. They say making money is easy. It's maintaining it and holding on to it. And I think the same plays to success. Is like, you can get that initial success, but holding on to it's a different story.
Hi there, this is Jit Navlaka, your host at the Business of Coaching podcast, and today I have Brendan Kane for you. Brendan Kane first went ahead and got 1 million followers, and then wrote a book that is called 1 Million Followers. This book diagnoses and dissects and shares ideas about how you too can get 1 million followers. And so I got Brendan to come down, talk about ideas that you could utilize to get these followers. Now, to build a successful coaching practice, you don't need 1 million followers. And that's not what I'm trying to imply. But hey, listen, if you could get followers that engage with you, love your content, love what you share, why would you not do that? If you are on social media, if you are on Instagram or Facebook and so forth, and are looking to get engaged followers, this interview is perfect for you. So without further ado, we're going to bring on Brendan Kane. But before we do that, I want to remind you that we post videos like this every single week, which means every single week you have an opportunity to learn from somebody who is doing really, really well in the field, or get direct videos where we share very, very useful information for absolutely free. And so go ahead and hit that red subscribe button so you can get a notification every single time we post a new video. Now, without further ado, let's roll it. Thank you so much for taking the time, Brendan.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I've heard so many great stories about the successes you've had in the past and all the wonderful book that you've written, which we'll talk about later in the conversation. But before we get started, we mostly speak to coaches, consultants, educators. And, as you may have known, coaches and consultants especially live in this world of constantly being challenged with what they do. You are somebody who consults a lot, right? So tell us a little bit about how you started that journey of being in the space that you are in right now, and how do you get past those challenges as you face them?
Yeah, so my journey is a bit interesting. So I've been in I would say the digital technology and social space for 15 years. And I think my journey starts even before that. Like, thinking back on it, like, I've always had this ingrained entrepreneurship DNA in me. I can remember at like age 6 or 7 taking my toys and walking around the neighborhood and knocking on neighbors' doors trying to sell my toys to their parents. So I really had that instilled in me from an early age. But where it started is I initially went to film school. I wanted to learn the business side of film and produce films, and I quickly realized that they don't teach you anything about business there. So I figured the best way to really learn about business is to start your own. And at the time, and it still holds true today, is the most cost-efficient way to do that was to start internet companies, because literally you don't have to have a retail location, you don't have to have a huge infrastructure. Like, literally we built some businesses that we got up in 48 hours. And then when I moved to LA to pursue a career in film, that's when the entertainment industry started to reawaken to digital after the dot-com bust. So I basically leveraged that knowledge to get my foot in the door, and I started within the corporate ecosystem of working for 2 movie studios. And then through that process, I had success, but I just realized I wasn't cut out for working in a corporate environment. And that's where I left, and I started building technology platforms and licensing them to big media companies. I built platforms for like Vice, Viacom, MTV, Yahoo, Paramount, and learned a lot about what it took to create a business. And then I think slowly but surely I just realized that I was better served from a strategic perspective of helping people grow their businesses than growing my own businesses. That's just where my value and my talent lies. And that's how I got more into the strategy and consulting side of business.
Oh, that's interesting. So you started, you realized your superpower was to be able to help other businesses more than help your own business in many ways. How did you come to that realization? How did you find that? That's a tough thing to find out. Yeah.
Trial and error. It's going through a lot of failure to learn what I was good at, creating businesses, some that worked, some that didn't. Also just paying attention to what fueled me, what excited me, what gave me energy, what drained my energy, what I enjoyed doing, what the feedback was. I'm a big person about feedback, testing and iterating and learning. So again, it was a long journey. It wasn't like one day I just woke up with this realization. I think it was a culmination of my career of 15 years of doing things. And I think really over the past like 3 or 4 years, I really was able to hone in on what I'm really good at, what I'm bad at, and where my strength and value lies. And that's really how I came to that conclusion.
Does it make you uncomfortable thinking about, oh, I can look at somebody else's business and I can see what's up, but I can't look at it my own business and find what's up?
I can look at it like, listen, there's a lot of truth to that, and to anything that we do, is that when you're in the midst of it, like it's hard to kind of see the forest through the trees when you're in the middle of it. And that's why I have my own advisors. I have my own consultants around me to help with that perspective. I would say that I've gotten a lot better at recognizing things just from pure learning. Could I start my own business? In a lot of ways, I do have my own business in terms of the brand that I'm building, the team that I've built, the type of client work that I do. It is a business at the end of the day. It's just not me scaling like a formal corporation or a formal brand in that way. But I think, to your question, is it uncomfortable? Yes, but I think that's what fuels me. Is whenever I get uncomfortable, for example, I was doing a campaign for my personal brand the other month, and the numbers were off, and we lost $16,000 in 30 days. And yeah, it sucks, but what that did is it fueled me. And it's like, okay, I need to figure out a better way to do this. And every time I've been in those situations where I've gotten uncomfortable, I've experienced a failure or not sure how to achieve something, it just fuels me more to learn, to constantly be learning and challenging myself to push that next level.
Let me tap a little bit into that, because that's something that daily happens for coaches and consultants, and for any entrepreneur for that matter, is daily you're going through, oh crap, that didn't work, oh crap, that didn't work. What's your process? What's your mindset around saying, oh, it didn't work? How do you get yourself back up?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, in the beginning, it would take days, sometimes a week if you had a failure just starting out. And as you go through that more and more, it just gets easier and easier to deal with. And like now I'll have situations where maybe it's hours. Sometimes I can get through it in 20 or 30 minutes. And I think for me personally, I think you need to recognize that human emotion and not like push it down. Just recognize and have the awareness of what you're feeling, what you're going through, because it is part of it. Like, to be anxious, to be stressed, that's telling you something. And it's not to say that, and I don't believe in this concept of you're going to eliminate stress, you're going to eliminate anxiety and all your problems, because I don't think you're really going to be in a healthy place. But just recognize what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and then take action. I think that's the biggest part, is like, don't dwell in it. It's like, okay, something didn't work here. Why didn't it work? And what am I going to do to either fix it or to improve upon it on the next time so that it doesn't happen again? So that's my internal process. I do definitely get down. Sometimes it takes a few hours, sometimes it's 20 or 30 minutes, and I do have a lot of self-doubt that creeps in. But to me, it's like the only way to solve that is to push forward and to keep learning and finding better ways to do things.
Is it that you found that there are certain traits that are useful in those situations? Is that, like, for example, it could be that you're just very curious as a person, or you found curiosity to be that trait, or is it just something else? I don't know. Is there any trait that you identified, you are like, when I get into the state of anxiety or stress and so forth, the way to process is to tap into these traits of mine? Is that something?
I would say that the first place I go to is, like, I've been in years of therapy and self-exploration. So I find with myself, and I think with a lot of people, the way that we perceive the world and the way that we react to the world is based upon experiences all the way back to childhood. So first, determining what's the difference between what's real now, what is causing me to feel something now, versus what is something from the past that's causing me to feel a certain way. Because you need to really separate that first and have that level of awareness so that you can make the appropriate decision. So the first place I go is just to sit there and feel, what am I experiencing? Mm-hmm. Like, what is the level of awareness that I can get? Is this something that's stemming from the past, or is this something that really is from the present moment that I need to pay attention to? And then once I have that clarity, I just sit with it, I understand it, I have compassion and empathy for myself, which I'm not saying is an easy thing to do. I'm still learning how to do that. And then once I've had that moment, then I'm like, okay, now what is the action that I'm going to take to fix this problem, or to learn a different way of doing this, or to make sure that I take this learning to go to the next level?
So you said you were being in years of therapy. Is
Yeah.
there certain tools that you've picked up in the process? Like you said, there's, of course, you've done the work and you constantly learn to it. Is there some particular tools that you would suggest for people who would want to get past those challenges quickly?
Yeah, there's so many, like I've been on this journey for probably 12 years of personal development and self-exploration, and I have tried so many different things, and it's hard to tell, because I feel like even if something doesn't work for you, you still take something from it. And over the course of years, I've done so many things. So I do meditation. I'm a firm believer in meditation and its application to relieve stress, to center yourself. I do therapy with a therapist. I believe that is definitely a helpful aspect. I just started working with psychedelic therapy sessions with psilocybin. I've done a few of those sessions over the past 3 or 4 months. That's been a tremendous experience for me. So I'm always constantly exploring and learning and trying new things. I think it's really a personal thing. I think that certain things work for certain people and certain things don't. So I would always say just try something for yourself. Test. Does it make a difference? What type of impact do you see with it? And then move on to the next one. I think it is being curious and having that mindset of don't just follow the herd. Like, be your own person. Like, just because somebody even you trust recommends something to you doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Like, explore it, be open to it. But if it doesn't, move on to something else, and figure out what it is that really works for you.
Tell me something, Brendan. What was it that was a life experience or business experience that got you into a place of saying, I need to create greater progress, I need to help these companies get the kind of outcome that you help them get? What are those things? What is that one experience or two experiences that you felt created that transmission? The reason I ask that is because usually in experiences like that, hides deep meanings or deep motivations for people, and sharing those stories enables other people to be able to see their story in a different light, often, especially if they're struggling in that moment. So any moment or experience or a life challenge or story that you feel would be was useful to you to make progress, which may not look useful at the time when it happened?
I mean, there's so many different experiences, across the course of my career, or just life in general, that have put me on a different path. So, for example, when I was born, I got stuck in the birth canal, and because of that, I had Erb's palsy in this shoulder, and it was underdeveloped. I couldn't fully straighten it out, and I'm naturally right-handed, so I had to learn how to do everything left-handed. So from an early age onset, that challenge actually was a blessing, because it wired my brain in a certain way that I could see things differently than other people. Another aspect of my childhood growing up, I had a very strong presence with my father that was very hard on me in sports, would push me, was sometimes verbally abusive with me, and that was a real struggle, and it's something that I'm currently working on today. But that instilled a specific drive in me that still drives me today. And then I think more towards the business side of it, what I just realized through the course of my career of being an entrepreneur is I always had to go into rooms with big celebrities, big corporations, big brands, and convey a vision. And I don't want to say sell, because I don't believe in selling. I believe in providing value. But I had to go into rooms every single day and learn how to read the other person, understand how they perceive the world, what are their obstacles, what are their goals, what are their aspirations, and be able to tailor a message or solution to those that would inspire them to take action. And doing that over and over and over again, that is where I got really good at connecting with people. And that's where I feel a lot of my mission is going, is being able to connect people, inspiring them to take action by taking really complex ideas, really complex solutions, and distilling them down into the simplest form so that they can activate on it, so they can take control of that that they wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
Wow, it's amazing. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's look at a little bit of the work that you've done in the past couple of years, like especially your book that we have right here, which the title is 1 Million Followers. Now, before we even get into why did that manifest and so forth, let's first figure out why even get 1 million followers. Where did that inspiration come from?
So and it's actually the second book I'm working on right now, which is called Hook Point, How to Stand Out in a 3-Second World. And it's one of the things that I work with people on extensively, and the thing that I've perfected over the course of my career and going into rooms and inspiring people to take action, doing it both offline and online. The reality of the situation is we live in a world where there's 60 billion messages sent on digital platforms each day. Like, we live in a micro-attention world. Mm-hmm. And especially when you're talking about like coaches, businesses, brands, products, and services, like, you need a way to capture people's attention. You can no longer just say, like, I'm a business coach, I'm an inspiration coach, I'm a digital strategist, I'm a marketer, because there's so much noise out there, there's so much saturation. And what I've seen is that you'll have some of the most talented people in the world that really have the ability to transform it, but they can't because they can't overcome the noise. Mm. So why the 1 million followers? Because it's a great hook point. The difference between saying, hey, I have a marketing strategy to grow your audience, or I'm a digital strategist, saying I generated 1 million followers in 100 countries in 30 days. Mm-hmm. Like, that stands out. And that's the reason I did it, is to grab people's attention so the real work can begin. And I'm not talking about clickbait. Like, you have to back it up with value and offer real tangible information, but it's a way to grab somebody's attention so that then you can deliver the real message. And that was the whole purpose and reason behind it.
That's awesome. And I want to actually, if you're open to talking a little bit about your next book, because I think to craft that hook is paramount in the coaching world, consulting world, actually the world right now, because like you said, it's a 3-second world. How is it that you even think about it? We don't need to go really deep into it, but if you could just give some pointers.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, there's an exercise that I take people through that I think is really helpful, and we use it. And this exercise and this concept of hook point can be used for anything. Like, we can be used for a book title, an article, each piece of video that you create, a landing page, whatever it may be. But at a very high level, the way that I visualize it for myself and for other people is, let's just say you have the editor of a magazine in your niche calling you and say, listen, we're giving you the cover of this magazine. You're going to be the only person on this magazine. What is your headline going to be? And that headline has to be less than a 1 sentence. The fewer the words, the better. And then when you're thinking and brainstorming about that headline, don't think about it from your perspective. Think about it your potential audience and customers' perspective. And imagine them walking down a busy street with all this noise and clutter all around them, and now they're passing a magazine stand. And there's 50 other magazines on that stand. What is that headline that's going to make somebody stop, pick it up, buy it, and read it? Because that's the world we live in. That's how difficult it is. And then when doing that, I don't want you to just come up with one. Come up with 5, 10, 15, and then test them. Test them online, test them offline. See how people measure that response. And that's where, like, the real work begins with that. Like, where I got, so I understood how to do this really well offline communication, but where I got really good online is I worked with a journalist called Katie Couric, and when she was going from traditional television to a deal with Yahoo, that transition was struggling because there was just so much noise online with content. And I spent about 2 years reverse engineering the art of the interview with her to be successful on digital platforms. And I did 220 interviews with her, ranging from like a Jessica Chastain to a Joe Biden to a Jay Leno to Chance the Rapper, all across the board. And through those 220 interviews, I tested 75,000 variations of content, just rapidly iterating and just seeing what would draw people in, how to package content, how to grab people with a hook. And that's where, like, the fundamental exercise and analogy of the magazine starts. But where the real work becomes is really just using that in everything that you do and just get really good at it. And that's where I work with a lot of clients. And it's the reason that I want to do this book, because working with billionaires and like huge, big CEOs and celebrities, I find that the smarter people get, the harder it is for them to distill their information down in the simplest form. And that's what excites me, of being able to help people on that level really get their information across.
Wow, that's amazing. So I love the analogy of saying, hey, what if you're walking on a busy street, you had a magazine stand, there are 50 other magazines on it. How do you say that one thing that would get people to say, I want that magazine, and they want to keep it, or buy it and keep it and read it? How, I know you kind of alluded to it a little bit, is to really see how to create a concise message from the perspective of your client. Instead of thinking about you, think about your client and keep it into 5-7 words, whatever that is. Is there a secondary step to that? Is there something that when I am thinking about that, as if I was to discover that message right now, what are the questions that I should be asking myself to get to that point?
Yeah, so where my head goes with this is, first and foremost, and you already hit on it, but it's so important because most people make the biggest mistake of when they're designing content, they're designing a hook point or anything, they're just thinking about what they want to say, not what the other person wants to hear. So you have to make that mindset before you even start this process, because if you get so caught up in what you want to say and what your message is in your head, it's going to make everything more difficult. So that's the first place. And then the second place that I start is make sure, and this is where I see a lot of people in doing these exercises go wrong, make sure it's not something that you've already heard before, or making slight tweaks of words. Like some people, for example, like one of the ways that I look at it is, meme cards on the top of videos. It's a burned in headline at the top. And the reason people do that is because 70% of video on Facebook and Instagram is watch with the sound off. So somebody a long time ago invented that meme card. And it works, but it's so oversaturated. Everybody uses it now. So you can't just put text on there and just expect it to work. Now it has to be creative. So it's like the difference of saying on that meme card where a lot of people's head will go, think positively, or think positive and your goals will be achieved, or something along those lines. I'm sure people will come up with better, but you've heard that 100 times. Mm-hmm. So I see that, and I'm like, okay, I understand that, I've heard it, I don't need to watch it, I'm gonna swipe up, I'm gonna swipe up, versus flipping it on its head of how thinking positively can get you into trouble. Mm-hmm. And the content behind it could be the exact same, but just flipping it on its head and capturing people's attention. Like we did a video recently where the meme card was sweat the small stuff, where you're used to seeing don't sweat the small stuff. So automatically we see people stopping and capturing that attention. So just do a play on words of yes, you can make general statements, but make sure it's not a general statement that's been said 100 times. And if it's been said 100 times, then make sure you're doing a play off of words to make it stand out. Again, it's like with the book, is there's a difference between saying rapid growth strategies and 0 to 1 million followers in 30 days. Like the 0 to 1 million followers in 30 days got 16,000 people to apply to me in like 2 months to apply to work with me. Just because I'm playing off of words and really wrapping their attention around that. Then once you have their attention, you need to have a compelling story to tell. It's not that you just grab their attention and then all of a sudden everything falls into place. Like the way that I look at it in the world today is you have to, the first and most important part is you have to win 3 seconds. And you're winning that 3 seconds for an additional 10 seconds. And then you have to win them for that 10 seconds. And then you go from 10 to 30, from 30 to 60, and then from going on. So yes, the most important part is really hooking them in, and where a lot of people struggle, but then you have to have the substance and the storytelling to back it up. So what is that really compelling narrative and story that's going to wrap back into that expectation that you've set with that hook point? And then finally, it's like, you got to build trust and credibility, and it has to be authentic. So don't just go after hook points that you can't back up. Because that's where you're getting into clickbait. Is like you have to be able to do it in an authentic way that really matches the expectations that you've set forth with that meme card or with that hook point. Again, the analogy of the magazine is if you read a headline on the cover and you pick it up and the article either doesn't really talk about it or the article is poorly written, you're just going to be like, this is dumb, I'm going to throw this out and I'm not going to pay attention to it after that.
Wow, I love it, and I kind of was like, wow, this is brilliant. I want to recapture what you just said, because you basically went from saying, hey, there's a hook point, but you have to think about how you're capturing or recapturing their attention pretty much every 10 seconds or 30 seconds or 50 seconds, depending on whatever is the length of the video that you're going for. Because you said, yes, you talk about something that's an exciting thing, but is not necessarily something that is intuitively you go, oh, I know about it. it's kind of counterintuitive, or it challenges the popular belief, if I may. And that's kind of to get started. But what was interesting that you said right after that is, yes, but don't stop there. Think about why they will stay for 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 50 seconds, minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever the length of the video. And that, I think, is what sometimes we miss, as sometimes as people who are just saying, hey, if only I could get more people to kind of look at what I have to say. It's not only about looking at what to say, but how to keep them going on to continue to look at what you have to say, right?
100%. And I think that you started to allude to it, but one of the most important things that I've learned, because I study human behavior and communication and psychology pretty in depth, and what I find is that oftentimes it's not what you say, but how you say it. It's like people can be true experts and really have very tangible information, but they're not packaging it in a way that people can hear it. And that's where it falls flat, especially with coaches and experts in their fields, is they are so smart. They are so detailed. They understand. They're so in their head about what works that they can't distill it in a way of thinking about the other person. And that's really where I'm doing a lot of focus of working with people, is pulling that out of them and taking their brilliance and packaging it in such a way that it can be heard, that you can draw people's attention, especially in the world that we live in. Like when you're talking about social media, you're fighting the algorithms, and like the algorithms get a huge bad rap and everybody's mad at them and upset. Oh, my posts aren't getting reach, and oh, the algorithms are against me. They're there to serve a purpose. Like they're there, and this is the same with the human brain. And I'll just give the analogy of algorithms because it applies both online and offline. Is the algorithms are designed that every time you open the app, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, whatever it is, they want to serve up the content that you're going to engage with the most, because their whole company and revenue source is about keeping you on the app as long as possible. So if you open up that app and you start getting content that's not engaging, what are you going to do? You're going to close the app. And then if that keeps happening over and over again, you're going to stop using the app less and less, and eventually you just stop using the app altogether. So the algorithms are designed to push the content that it feels users are going to respond to the most, and it's different for each person. So each of us follows anywhere between like 300 to like 2,000 people. Some people may follow more. The algorithms have to design, okay, which content should I serve to you? What content should I serve to me? And that's where it's really designed to basically put the best content at the top. And that's where you have to design your message. It's not just about what you're saying, it's about how you're saying it, so the algorithms can read it, so the engagement can be generated off of it. And it's the same with the human brain. The human brain is designed as an algorithm to understand what information should I take in, what information should I keep, what information should I throw out. And that's where it's designing that message in such a way that it really resonates with people. So not only does it bring somebody in, but allows you to retain that information with the consumers or the audience that you're reaching with your content.
That's a beautiful way that you just explained to think about algorithms, because that's something that I know we always complain about.
Yeah.
Everybody complains
we
about
complain
it.
about it too. It's frustrating,
Yeah.
but if you know what it is and why it's doing what it's doing, and you, instead of getting upset about it, you come up with a solution to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I wanted to kind of allude to something, which is something that's very famously said: if you want to be interesting, be interested. Right, and if you want to be interesting, being interested kind of suggests the idea. If you want to really be interesting for the algorithm and the clients that you are going to serve, or people that you want to communicate your message to, be interested in how they operate. Right, like you said, be interested in why algorithms operate the way they operate, and you'll be able to figure out how to beat them.
Yeah.
Because it's basically, you'll be interesting to them because of the engagement, because of not just thinking about what you say, but how you say it and so forth, the ideas that you communicate. It's the same as the real world, in the offline world. If you want to be interesting, be interested in the person across, because that's the only time that they're going to give you any attention.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's fascinating, and this is so much great juice that is right here. Tell us a little bit more about your journey to get 1 million followers. We understand the context of why you did it. It made sense perfectly. Then how did you go about doing it, and what was the secret to that?
So what happened was, initially, I helped build one of the largest social paid optimization firms in the world, and what that means is we were optimized advertising spend on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram for like Fortune 100 and 500 companies. And it was really an eye-opening experience for me, because we would have the biggest brands and corporations in the world come to us with a piece of creative and say, here's a piece of creative that we've invested hundreds of thousands, in some cases millions of dollars on. And here's a budget of $1 million. Sometimes it was more than that. And we want to target, let's just say, females 35 to 50 years old with this piece of creative. And when you ask them, well, how do you know that this piece of content is going to resonate with this audience to the tune of risking all of that money? 9 times out of 10, they didn't have the analytics or data to support that decision. They were just doing a creative hunch and a creative risk. And for huge corporations, sure, you can take a few of those risks and lose and not have a tremendous impact on the business, but it's not a long-term strategy. If you keep losing, it's not going to work. And then for the rest of us, we just don't have that level of money to go off and risk. So I left working on that company. I started building my own set of testing methodologies on top of Facebook and Instagram, really to be able to test content at scale and understand what content formats, themes, and stories resonate with people to get them to perform a specific action, whether it's to share a piece of content, to just view it, to like it, to comment, for lead generation, traffic, followers, whatever it may be. And I went back, I started using it on the brands and corporations and was seeing success and hitting their key KPIs, which a majority of them is awareness and just overall engagement because they're going after massive reach. And then I decided, okay, can this be applied working with, celebrities and professional athletes as well, but not just from an awareness and engagement perspective, but generating followers. Because I had specifically some professional athletes I'm working with where their endorsement deals are specifically tied to how many followers they have. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to see, could my learnings be applied to that as well? And I was seeing success with that. And as I was seeing data come in from different parts of the world, it really fascinated me to understand what it would take for different people from different backgrounds, from different parts of the world to engage and follow a brand that they had never been aware of before. And then it seeded another idea in my head. It's like, okay, it's great. Over the course of my career, I've worked with some of the biggest celebrities and corporations, brands on the planet. But what about people starting from scratch? What about people starting from zero? Could I take the learnings and apply it to them? And that's where, when thinking about it, again, I'm a very experiential learner. I don't like theorizing about things. I don't like talking about them. I like doing, because that's how I learn. I thought that I have to run an experiment to figure out what's possible. And when thinking about who to run it on, I thought, why not myself? Because I've never been on television. I'm not a professional athlete. I'm not a musician or any of those things. I was starting from scratch. I was starting from zero. And that's where I set out on this experiment of building a million followers in 100 countries in 30 days on Facebook initially. And then I built another system, similar concept in terms of the process that we do for Instagram as well.
Mm-hmm. So you're like a scientist for social media in many ways. In the modern world, how to really approach people in an interesting way to be able to get the attention in the new world.
I would say that I focus on innovation, and I do it in all aspects of business. Social media is just what I'm known for recently because of the book and the million followers thing. But like as we're talking about the next book, Hook Point, there is a social media component to it, but it talks about both online and offline. So I'd say that I am more of an innovation and strategist, that I just love figuring out how things work, like complex problems, distilling it down to its simplest form, and then scaling it. Like mm-hmm. that's what I really love to do. Mm-hmm. And social media is just one of the aspects in digital that I focus on because I just feel like there's so much potential there.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit what you may already be discussing in the book. By the way, this is the book that is sitting right by me. What you may already be discussing in the book, which is how does one get to 1 million followers?
Yeah, so the book is the methodology and the process that I used to do it. First and foremost, I don't feel like everybody needs 1 million followers because it's a pretty daunting task to do. It's really just the system on how you can be successful on social and digital platforms. It's the underlying process that we use, the underlying mindset that we use. So it includes my process, breaking down step by step of how I did it. But then I went off and interviewed my top friends and partners in different facets of digital and social growth. People that have created billion-dollar e-commerce companies, people that have scaled YouTube platforms, Instagram, all of them, so that I could give well-rounded information. Because I'm a firm believer that not every strategy is right for every person. So I present my strategies and then I present other people's strategies and say, pick the one that works for you. But just giving a well-rounded base of information that comes from leading experts. And it's not just high-level fluff information. It's very detailed and specific of how we approach that. I get really upset and turned off by people in the space that just say this is the only way to do something. And you see so much of it from agencies and contractors because that's all they know. And that's why I like being a strategist than an agency, because I can come to somebody and say, okay, this is the exact strategy that you should use, and here's the perfect partner to do it. So I'm not incentivized to say you should use my strategy because this is the only way I make money. That's just, I don't think that really provides value to people in reaching their goals.
Absolutely, absolutely. But because for the sake of this interview, and I'm 100% in alignment with you, which is where we come in as well, where we try to we never say this is the way, which is why this podcast is designed the way it is designed, is because we bring in people from all walks and say, hey, this is a way of doing something. And if this is right for you, go for it. If it's not, fine, it's fine. The next person, maybe you're looking more for inspiration than actual going, okay, I have to copy someone. That's not our intent here as well. So, but still, it's inspiring to see somebody else be able to pull off something that sounds like a really crazy idea, especially because I'm not a musician, I'm not an actor, I'm not a celebrity, but I said, what if I had to experiment to get 1 million followers across 100 countries in 30 days? What would I do? We could do two ways of approaching this. One, you could talk about the mindset of how you approached it. It probably is a lot about testing, but definitely we can lean into that. But we would also love to be able to, if you would be able to share some of the ideas that happened, things that worked, things that didn't work, and how did you deal with that along the way?
Absolutely. Just first and foremost, mindset is the most important thing in all this. That's where I really start, and I've shifted my message and how I work with people is understand why you're doing it. Most people don't understand the real reason that they're trying to grow a social following and what that tangibly means for the future of their success. And the reason that's so important is this is hard work. I did it in 30 days, but I work on it every day. And we're working on new strategies, new ways of doing things, and new ways of producing content and engaging people. And some people come to me and they're like, I hate social media, but I feel like I have to be on it. I said, don't do it. Just don't. First off, there's other ways to be successful in business. And if you don't like it, you're not going to be successful. Even if you hire an agency or a contractor, you have to be involved. So even if you don't like it at its core, you have to find some redeeming factor of understanding and conceptualizing, okay, this is where it's leading towards my success or my overall goal. And using that as your guiding light when things do get tough. And I make people rank from a scale of 1 to 10 when they visualize why they're doing and what their ultimate goal is. Like, how is it with 10 being the highest? Is it a 5? Is it a 4? Is it a 10? Because that's going to really drive your decisions going forward. For me, it's a 10. So I keep pushing forward. I risk money, I risk time, I risk resources, just constantly figuring this stuff out because I know the potential and I see the potential, I see it paying off, and I know where it's leading, and I'm not going to settle for anything else than achieving the end goals that I'm going after. Mm-hmm. In terms of the tactical side of things, what I break down in the book is a 3-step adaptive process. So the first step is a hypothesis of what is that content format, theme, or structure that you think is going to work to generate the intended action from the audience that you're trying to reach. And a part of that hypothesis phase is doing a competitive analysis. So people always come to me, should I produce videos? Should I produce photos? Should I produce articles? What does it look like? I was like, okay, make a list of accounts from anywhere 5 to 25 accounts that basically reach the audience that you want to reach. And you don't want to go after the outliers. You don't want to go after a Taylor Swift or somebody at that level because their numbers are skewed based upon the traffic sources and how big their brand is. Go after people that are anywhere between 200,000 to 3 million followers that gained it just from creating compelling social content. And then study what are the formats, structures, and themes that are working for them, and also the ones that are not working for them. And if you do that across multiple accounts, you'll start to see trends of what works and what doesn't work for them. And then the most important thing is which of these formats feels authentic to me, because just because it works for somebody else doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And then once you have that hypothesis, then you go to the second step in the testing phase and you create a low-cost proof of concept that represents that hypothesis you set forth. And when I mean low cost, I mean low cost. I want you spending thousands or tens of thousands of dollars on a single piece of content until you figure out that it works for you and you've done it multiple times. So that can mean using stock videos. It can mean putting an iPhone in front of your face, or just any way that you can quickly iterate to produce that hypothesis to see if it works. And then the third step is you measure the results. You measure the data from that. And if it didn't work, then you start that process over again. You set a new hypothesis, you test, and you pivot, and you keep doing that over again until you find something that works. At a very conceptual high level, that's the process. And I want to make it simple because that's how you succeed. Like, it's just following those 3 steps. It may take you 100 times, it may take you 500 times, but that is how you're successful. And it's also how you're successful in the long run. Like, because just because you have success doesn't mean you're going to maintain it, because things are constantly iterating, things are constantly changing. So I always want to instill that into people, because the biggest mistake people make is they just keep putting content out there and they don't learn anything from it. And they just keep doing the same thing over and over again, and they're not seeing the growth, they're not seeing the engagement, they're not seeing the results. And then they think, oh, either I'm not good at social media, or social media doesn't work, or social media doesn't work for me. It can work for anybody. I've worked with clients in every aspect of the industries. I work with non-profits, healthcare companies, supplement companies, professional athletes. I've done pet stuff, like all across the board. And the system works if you just follow it and you stick with it. In terms of further detail, like, people ask me the difference between images and videos. Like, videos are far more effective and powerful, but they're so much harder to pull off, because there's so many different variables that come into play. Like we were talking about before, you have the first 3 seconds, you have the meme card, you have the captions. Then after the first 3 seconds, you have to maintain them for 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds. If you nail it, like, the growth is astronomical. You look at what Jay Shetty does, what Prince EA does, like, they've got it nailed, and that's where they drive tremendous growth. Photos, much easier to pull off because it's a split second. People determine whether they like it or not, but it's not as viral as a video. It's not as in-depth. It's not building the level of story that a video can. And I'm not going to just generalize it for everything, but just at a high level, that's kind of the way it looks. So I always recommend, and in the groups that we run, like, we have a call every month where we just dissect the videos that we produce. And we just break down our methodology and process. Why did we choose this story? Why did we structure the content this way? Why did it work? Why did it not work? Because I really want to instill that into people, is like to understand how, and my creative director calls it communication design, is like how you design content in a certain way that effectively communicates to generate that level of engagement that you're looking for, to generate the intended response that you want for your outcome.
That's a really well put together process, and I feel like it's so important even for business. Like, of course, you give it in context of social media, but that also shows how you're a total strategist, because the iteration process that you suggested is so useful in anything that you do, really, even for a product that you create. I want to ask a directed question for the type of individuals that watch this, right? They will be coaches and consultants, especially. And because of that, like you mentioned, not all of them need 1 million followers.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily trying to enroll thousands of people into their programs. They're trying to enroll 30, 50, 100 people in their program, because their programs are usually pretty reasonably priced. They're 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, right? So they're not looking for a ton of clients, but they're looking for the right clients.
Yeah.
And I know you said previously in this conversation where you kind of said it's not that everybody needs 1 million followers. What would you suggest to somebody if you had to kind of like flip the conversation of 1 million followers and just say, hey, let's say a client, a coach is requiring 30 clients a year, hypothetically, right? What would you suggest the approach if they decided and they felt right that social media was the way they wanted to approach clients and find clients? What would be some suggestions that you would go, this is what you want to think about, this is what you want to create, this is what you want to test?
So there's 2 approaches that you can take with it. The first approach that I generally will recommend for people is, like, if you're trying to just drive leads, trying to drive revenue, trying to drive sales, don't focus on followers. Just focus on campaigns that's going to drive the traffic into some type of funnel or some type of lead generation that is going to bring the people that you want. And again, it's the same process, a three-step process, the hypothesis, test, and pivot, and doing that over and over again. And the hook point is a huge critical factor in that, because the hook point will dictate how effective you are in terms of driving down your cost of capturing leads. And then you can look at the platform. What is the best platform to do that? Like, typically, if you're going after higher priced people, LinkedIn is a great platform for that. You can do it off cold traffic, off Facebook. In Instagram, you got to go after more scale with it, where maybe you get 5,000 leads and you find a way, and there's different ways that you can do this, of just make sure that you're offsetting your cost to capture those leads. So you're generally, you're generating those leads for free, and then you take them through some type of ascension model to find those key 30, but you're still building your brand at the same time, and you're giving lower cost products or services to those other people. But just really focused on direct response marketing campaigns. It's fueling it. AdWords is another one. You could leverage AdWords. You can use YouTube advertising. You can create YouTube videos to really bring in that audience, because YouTube is the second world's largest search engine. It's labeled as a social network, which it kind of is, but it's really at the end of the day a search engine. So that's one way of thinking of it. The other way of thinking of it is there's this concept of the 1,000 true fans. And, there's a book on it. It's been talked about widely, of just building those fans and those leads one by one to build your business. The interesting thing is, and I hadn't realized it until I had a friend point it out to me, is I actually do the reverse of it. So I started off in the movie industry, and in the movie industry, you're trained to think big. Like, you have to take a piece of content, unless it's a sequel, like you have to take a brand and make it known in like less than 2 months. And you can't go into a meeting and talk about ideas that are going to reach 10,000 or 100,000 people. You'll get fired for that. So I had to immediately think about, like, how do we reach tens of millions of people with our message? So that's where, like, why I go to 1 million followers in 30 days is my brain is automatically trained to think big. So the other approach that you can take, it's a little bit riskier to do, but there's far less competition because people aren't doing it, is you build a large social following. And then you leverage that larger social following for opportunities. So you leverage it to get on large podcasts. You leverage it to get on TV. You leverage it to get book deals. You leverage it to get on bigger stages. And by doing that, that's where you can reach your core clients. So you're leveraging this concept of a social following, and the leads or the clients that you're trying to attract may not come directly from the social following in the beginning. It's going to come from strategically leveraging the audience size that you have into these other opportunities where those leads, where those clients will come from. In addition, by doing that, you're increasing your brand awareness and driving back to build the followers even further from there.
That's a really, really cool and interesting approach to reverse it, but also look at it from the lens of 1,000 raving followers, or however that was. So that's 1,000 true followers, sorry. Yeah, that was the word you used. So I love the dichotomy of being able to play this or be able to play that. If you were to, so there's this concept, and this is something that is more a personal question, but I'm sure this is a question for a lot of people that may be listening in. One of the concepts that I am passionate about personally is being able to connect with people as personally as I possibly can, right? Which is why I keep these conversations very personal. Anything that I do on social media, I try to keep it as personal, but it is significantly more harder because you're trying to go and you're actually trying to comment on every comment. You're trying to respond to every person. But again, our business is so focused on a really small audience. If you think about it, how many coaches are there in the world? There are not millions of coaches in the world, there are thousands of coaches in the world, right? So we could keep that approach and it would still work. Do you suggest, again, in context of the type of people that we're talking about, I know you go more mass and then you sort out the audience, which is amazing, but just knowing algorithms and just knowing social media, just knowing relationship psychology strategy, what would be your recommendation to somebody who wants to keep the conversation personal? Is social media a good network for it even?
It's a great question. I think that anything through digital devices is less personal than doing it in person, face to face. That's just the reality of it. But you can't ignore the fact that that's where a majority of communication happens. It's just, that's the nature of it. And a lot of consultants and coaches, they build their business by working with clients that all are spread out the world. It's one of the beauties of the internet, is that we can all now go and travel, live in different places, connect with people in different parts of the world and help them. So to me, I don't really look about, is it personal? I look at it as, am I providing value? Am I having an impact on somebody's life? If I'm having an impact on somebody's life through a video that I've just put out, then that's having an impact. And yeah, maybe it's not the same impact of having a face-to-face conversation, but it's still making a difference in somebody's life. It's still helping somebody in their life. So yes, is it impersonal, but I think it's just a different form of communication. And like for me, again, like I am very interested in how you leverage the online for offline opportunities, how you leverage online to get those in-person experiences so that you can go and speak at events, that you can run in-person workshops or things of that nature, that you can have that one-to-one interaction, or you can have these conversations on podcasts or different press like that. So I look at it more holistically than just to say, okay, social media is impersonal, so I'm just not going to do it. Like, you can take that approach, but I think that it's a little short-sighted, because I think that people can have tremendous value and have tremendous impact on other people's lives through that form of communication.
Mhm. Beautiful. Brendan, if there was, I like to conclude all interviews with one question, which is, hey, is there something that I should have asked you in this conversation that I didn't ask? Is there a question that I should have asked you that I didn't ask?
I think that we covered pretty much everything. If there's one distilling thing that I would convey to people, is that this is an iterative process. Is just learn and experiment and have fun with it. Like, that is the most important thing, because you could go viral tomorrow, but if you don't have that mindset of constantly learning and iterating, it's ultimately not going to be sustainable, because we all have to reinvent ourselves. The most successful people, like, I've talked to some really wealthy and successful people. They say making money is easy. It's maintaining it and holding on to it. And I think it the same plays to success. Is like, you can get that initial success, but holding on to it's a different story, especially in the world that we live in, where things are rapidly iterating so quickly. So don't get frustrated by the things that are not working. Just learn from it and keep going and searching for the right answers and the right strategies, and it ultimately will pay off.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. How can people know more about you? Of course, everybody that's listening to this, get this book called 1 Million Followers to know more about how to do that. And a lot of other iterative processes. There's a lot of insight here on how to communicate with people. But other than that, how is it that people can know more about you, your services, and things that you offer?
Yeah, so for the book, it's in major retailers. It's on Amazon. They can go to book.1millionfollowers.com, where we have the free shipping offer, and we have some add-on courses and things of that nature that provides more detail and context of the methodologies. Then they can check out my website, brendanjkane.com. Brendan's BRENDAN. They can email me directly, bkane@brendanjkane.com, or they can direct message me on Instagram @BrendanKane.
Cool. Oh, thank you so much for making yourself so available. Thank you so
Yeah,
much,
thank
Brendan.
you.
That was
I appreciate it.
phenomenal.
Thank you.
Absolutely love talking to you. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks.